Again, awesome. See, we have people filtering in. Hi, everyone. My name is Lindsay. I work on the marketing team here at Flatiron School, specifically for our online courses. Um, Thanks for taking the time to join us online today. I know there's a lot of online events you could be choosing to go to, so appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join us here. We have a stellar panel lined up today. I have Amanda, Bryn, and Jessica here with me. Before we get started with the questions that we're going to go through tonight and ultimately answer any questions you have for them, do you want to go over a couple of things? So as people filter in, I'm going to ramble a little bit so that we get to a critical mass before we get underway. But again, my name is Lindsay. I'm the marketing manager for online courses at Flatiron School. So if you have any questions about our online programs, feel free to ping me directly in the chat box and I will answer your questions for you. For those that don't know, Flatiron School is a tech education bootcamp. We were founded in 2012 in New York, originally as a single classroom in-person experience for coding courses, and have since expanded across the country as well as online. Today, we're offering all of our courses virtually, but I can get into some of the nuances of how our campus programs have transitioned into our virtual world, as well as how our online programs have always operated. But with that, we have been teaching classes online since 2017, so like to consider ourselves semi-experts in online learning, but I will let Amanda, Bryn, and Jessica talk more about their experiences in online learning and changing their careers in our online software engineering course. Before I hand it over to them to go through introductions and kick us off with our first question, I did want to go over two housekeeping items. First, if you have any questions at any point, feel free to either submit them in the chat box or the Q&A box. I'll be monitoring those two places throughout the webinar. So we'll address your question if it's urgent. Otherwise, I'm going to save it until the last half of tonight's presentation where we'll answer your questions live. So at any point, feel free to ping a thought or a question into the chat box. As practice with the chat box, we'd love to see where everyone is tuning in from. I'm always surprised by how geographically diverse we all are. I'm logging in from New York tonight, but would love to see where everyone else is logging in from. I see some coming in right now. I gotta pull up the chat. Houston, Queens, Castle Rock, Colorado, Charlottesville, Virginia, LA, Staten Island, Hey Neighbor, Wyoming, Santa Monica. This is awesome. So cool to see where everyone is logging in from. Second housekeeping item, if you have to leave at any point during the webinar, don't worry, I will send the recording of this webinar out to everyone afterwards. So you can catch up where you were, or you can rewatch it to gain or to listen to some of the, I'm sure, very exciting and insightful things our alumni have to say tonight. So with that, I'm going to close out of my notes and pull up our questions and get us kicked off. So again, want to thank our alumni, Amanda, Bryn, and Jessica for joining us tonight and volunteering their time to be here. Would love to get us kicked off with some introductions. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you were doing before Flatiron School and what you're up to now. Amanda, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. So I actually studied creative writing in college. And as you can probably imagine, there aren't a whole lot of jobs in creative writing. So I ended up going into hospitality and hotel management. So I was actually working as a housekeeping manager prior to starting Flatiron School, and started a long time ago and graduated this June. And now I am a software development engineer apprentice at Amazon. So.
Awesome. Jessica, do you want to?
Sure. I, prior to my current position, was a dance teacher for 20 odd years and
Wow.
dance coach, professional coach. So I got the bug because I had to do graphic arts and update a website that I didn't know how to do. So it really piqued my interest. But I actually just graduated from Flatiron July of 2019. And I am currently working at a startup called Fixed, which is for device repair, and we were just recently acquired by Assurant. And it's great. It's a great position, and I just love what I'm doing.
Thank you. And Bryn, I'll hand it over to you.
Hey guys, I'm Bryn. I'm tuning in from LA, and before Flatiron, I was working in the music industry, managing like 90s and early 2000s hard rock bands, so totally different from software engineering. I graduated Flatiron almost exactly a year ago, like last August, and I am currently a full stack engineer for a stealth startup.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining us again, for taking the time out of your day to be here. Would love to, I guess you're all online software engineering graduates. You've all gone through the online program, which I think right now a lot of people are very curious about what online learning is like. Can you talk a little bit about what pace of the program you chose to enroll in, and how that kind of, I guess, why you made that decision and how it ended up working well for you?
So I guess I'll go first. So I did the self-paced program. I think actually when I started, they didn't have the cohorts yet, which is, I can't speak to the cohorts, but I think that that's probably a better option if you can wrangle that, just to have that support and kind of that deadline to meet. So
I actually was self-paced as well, but that was mainly because I lived in a rural area in Virginia. So going to a campus was not feasible or economical. So I chose self-paced, but I was able to get some really good support and stay online with some really good teachers and classmates. So I highly recommend it if that works for you.
Yeah, so I did actually the full-time program online. So I was in a cohort. So I had, classmates essentially and a teacher that I stayed on pace with. Honestly, it was such a good experience. I actually coincidentally have like a meetup with all of them right after this. We're still in touch. We're still in touch a year later and just talk and, catch up. Yeah, I personally loved the online experience, especially I think just given where like employment is going and remote work and whatnot. A lot of the work I'm doing in my job now is figuring stuff out remotely and communicating remotely. So I actually felt like it was really good practice and learning for that.
Awesome. Yeah, we offer students the opportunity to learn with Slack and Zoom. So I think that's definitely very relevant, particularly that students get a quick look at it. Got a question, Jessica and Amanda, I'll let you guys answer this one. Are there limits on how quickly someone can finish the self-paced program? So I'll go out and say that we require students to finish it within 15 months of their day one start date, but would love you guys to expand upon how that worked out for you.
Sure, I finished actually in 8 months. I had a goal. Mainly, I needed to get a job, but there's only so much you can feed yourself on $5. But I'm also that type of person where I can put my head down and get the work done, and I'm my own. I drive myself very hard. If other people went their pace, that was good, but I always had a chance to tag in with an instructor or another classmate who may have been a little bit ahead of me or behind me to help me out. So I never felt like I was out of sync. Self-paced was good because I went my pace. It wasn't like I was dictated to follow a certain pace. How about you, Amanda?
So I actually was in the program for much longer than I expected to be. I have when I started, my son was 1, and my husband was a graduate student, so we kind of picked the hard route where both parents were going back to school at the same time, which made it difficult to try and fit time in. So I ended up doing a lot of the course, squished in between other commitments. And that was definitely a challenge, but that's probably one of the biggest reasons why finishing the course was such a big accomplishment for me. It's it's really rewarding to finish. And I think that one thing I would say about going the self-paced route is that sometimes, maybe this was the same thing for you, Jessica, it took me a while to get the rhythm of what was kind of a reasonable expectation of how much I could complete in 1 week. I sometimes had, which is why I think the cohorts are probably a good option. Sometimes I would be like charging full force on 1 week and get a lot done. And then the next week I was kind of recovering, trying to get stuff done, maybe not making as much traction. But so it took me a while, and I eventually found a rhythm kind of how much I should reasonably be getting done.
That's an awesome insight and awesome advice too. It's definitely a hard learning curve to learn how much you can do in 1 week.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
Transitioning a little bit to, Amanda, you mentioned going back to school, which is a very weird time right now. I think it's that traditional season of we're going back to school in some ways, but definitely not in the way we usually do. Many prospective and current students battle with imposter syndrome, going back to school and challenging something new. Did you feel insecure about not knowing things during or even after the program? What was your experience with imposter syndrome?
So I don't think that I've experienced, and I know that this is kind of odd because I don't think that I've experienced that much imposter syndrome. And I think that's because I knew absolutely nothing about code when I started. And so I could always kind of use that as a guidepost. Like, you didn't know this before, and you know this much now. Like, you've built a CLI gem, or you've built a Sinatra app or something like that. So I kind of had I had those projects as kind of mile markers of how much I had accomplished and how much I had learned. But I do think that one of the biggest learning curves for me starting out with the course is I had to learn that it was okay to make mistakes and it was okay to fail. And trying to work through that, during the labs, and realizing, like, if you don't get it the first time, that's normal. And there's no punishment for not getting it exactly right the first time. You're probably not going to pass all of the tests in the lab after the first round that you write code. And that's just kind of the norm. So it took a little while to get used to that, but eventually it's, kind of second nature now.
In my case, I swear that you haven't had imposter syndrome. I mean, I live with it every day, especially with the new job. I still have imposter syndrome. I talked to my lead engineer the other day, and he still has imposter syndrome after 7 years. So, and he says it's normal. The thing about code is you have to break it to fix it. You have to make mistakes for it to come out right. It doesn't work. You can't just write you can't write a Ruby method and just say, okay, that's it, it's perfect. It isn't. It's not perfect. And it's not going to be perfect, okay? But that's not the goal. So you're always learning, you're always breaking things, you're always making mistakes, but you learn from those mistakes. And it's funny, I still wake up in the morning and I go, how am I going to do this? They're going to figure out that I don't know what the heck I'm doing. What am I doing? How did I get here? But you love it so much, and you have to take notice of the accomplishments and the victories, the little victories you make along the way, because it does validate what you are doing. You're learning so much, and there's so much more that you're going to have to learn when you're done. So just, accept the little victories and have those as a backup for the times where you feel like, I don't belong here, because you do belong there. You really do.
Yeah, Jessica, I'm with you. I don't think I speak about imposter syndrome in the past tense yet. I think it's just kind of a part of being a software engineer. There is so much to know. Nobody will ever know everything. Right. And even if you did somehow get to a point where you knew everything, it would change in like a month. So it's just, it's constantly changing. different jobs you have are constantly needing, in need of different skill sets. So you could be a master at this, but then it might go, oh, well, we're going to build this other thing, and we're going to use this other language now. So it's just kind of part of the trade. And I think, I don't know, for me, I think I try to turn it into like a point of motivation almost, and a challenge to learn more and to expose myself to new things when I don't know what they are. But no, I mean, everyone's always going to be Googling stuff and going to be looking at Stack Overflow and looking at different resources and asking for help from other engineers. It's just a part of it.
And I do believe that you hit on that well, Bryn, is the hard part is asking for help. And you must, I mean, that's the one thing I did learn the hard way, is you should always ask for help, because not only does it give you the information you're looking for, but it endears you to other people who may also need help, or will turn around to you one day and say, hey, I don't know that. There's a symbiotic relationship between engineers and trying to figure things out and trying to help each other accomplish a goal. Because she's right, so many things change. I mean, the things you learn now are just a small part of what you're going to use when you leave. It's a good core foundation, but it will lead you into learning and experiencing other things with it. So you just ask for the help if you need the help. There's nothing wrong with that.
Awesome advice. And I think that's a great segue into our next question. One of the impressive things about our software engineering grads is the body of work that they end up graduating with. So you tackle a lot of concepts, you work on a lot of hard projects throughout your time at Flatiron School. Can you elaborate on what your final project process was like? What did you code? Where did you start? Can you explain what that was like a little bit?
So mine was my final project was kind of like a glorified to-do list. But basically I kind of found that when I was sitting down to work on my class, I had, as a mom, I had a lot of different things that I needed to work on when I had free time, essentially to work on class and do a couple other things. But one of the things that I wasn't as good at was managing, like, okay, I'm going to work on class for 2 hours, and then I'm going to check emails for an hour, and I'm going to edit photos, because I also had a photography business, edit photos for this period of time. And so what I created, my final project was essentially like a timekeeping, time management app, to say, like, these are the things, this is how much time I have total to work. These are the things that I want to accomplish. And then kind of sitting down and realizing, okay, is it realistic to only spend 10 minutes on this task? Or do I need to do, allocate a little more time? And what are the priorities for that day? So that was my, my final project. I approached it by kind of outlining it, what I wanted it to look like. And then a big thing for me with all of my projects was Flatiron does live walkthrough sessions where they will build an app from scratch for each of the projects. And so you can kind of see, okay, this is how they're doing it for this totally different app, and this is how I'm going to, you kind of use it as a reference. I used it as a reference point a lot, watching those videos and then kind of walking through and writing the code for my application. So that was that.
On my final project was, I made an app to catalog inventory for an art collection, or for art collections, including a place to hold resources like a little library. It was not one of those bell ringing super duper things that, one of the things I learned when I got to that point was, because there was so much information that we were given, that we learned, and so many things that we learned how to do. At one point, I felt as though I needed to put everything all those eggs in one basket, so that I learned how to do this, I learned how to do that, and I got to stick it all now in my final project. And it was really, really driving me crazy. And I couldn't do it. I almost gave up. That was, you hit a point where you just say, no, I can't do it anymore. And I would have quit, but I didn't, because I had a lot of help and support from people that would say, you know what, do what you feel's in your heart. What is it that makes you happy? What do you want to do your project on that you feel like you would get the most out of? Not what somebody else would get the most out of, and don't compare yourself to somebody else's app, but what is it that speaks to you? Keep it clean. Remember, you're learning how to code. You're not learning how to impress people. Keep it clean. Do the best you can do until you're happy. And that's what I did. So it didn't have a lot of bells and whistles, but it was clean, and I hit all the major points. And to this day, I use it as a reference point. So because it was a good React Rails mix with JavaScript and Ruby, to this point, when I forget something, or if I'm looking for something, I go back to my final project, believe it or not, to see how I put things together and see what I can use out of that. So that's my advice. Do what you feel is the best thing for you.
So for my final project, I was really driven to get into coding by, I don't know, I guess just wanting to work in fields and for companies that were having like a social and environmental impact on the world. So that was really what I was hoping to get into. So for mine, I kind of in that vein, I created something called WikiTrash, which was supposed to be like a kind of one-stop shop. You could search an item and then get instructions on how to recycle it. So yeah, it was something that was just personal to me, and I felt like would, in the job process when I'm trying to stand out to companies, hopefully show a little bit of who I am and what I care about. Yeah.
All very cool, and it's awesome to hear how different everyone gets with their final projects,
Yeah.
especially how they reflect something super personal or important to you. So that's awesome to hear, Bryn. Thank you. I see we have a couple of questions in the Q&A. I want to ask one more question that I have prepared for the group before we dive into those. I think it'll be a question a lot of people find very useful, but upon graduating, what was your job search like? Did you feel prepared, supported? Give us a quick, if possible, rundown of what your job search was like. I know that might not be possible, but general feelings of your job search.
Yeah, so I actually got my role before graduating, which is really not probably normal. But I ended up getting my offer and then had to motivate myself to finish my final project and graduate, because I just knew that I was going to have too much of a time commitment, once my job had started. So I graduated during COVID, which is kind of crazy, and had started kind of looking at jobs in March maybe, and had one job offer fall through and got this job offer, a month or two later, which was honestly the best thing that could happen. So yeah, really happy that this one came along.
I graduated July 2019. I had a stressful time because I was trying too hard to find a job and not the right job. So I applied, I started applying for 20 million things. You're just like, oh, let me just throw it all out there. I had a magnificent career coach, though, and the support of my family, thank goodness, to see me through the roughest time, which was looking for a job. It was highly stressful. I'm not a spring chicken. I am 61 years old. So you can imagine this is something that I was not used to doing, looking for a job. But I had great support. I finally decided to narrow my focus on companies that were smaller, because I hated the coding challenges. I hated all of that, codility crap and all of that. So I really had to narrow my focus and decide where is it you want to be and just stick to that. I had Amanda, I had a job that fell through that I spent so much time on. I made it to the last round, thought I had it, and they pulled the rug from under my feet, and it almost devastated me, but thank God it did, because now I have a job that I truly, truly belong with. And it happened. So just keep, you just have to stick it out and figure out what's right for you.
Yeah, so so again, I was the one who was in like the full-time program, so I had more of like a set graduation date. But it's hard. I'm not gonna lie. Like I've talked with people who are thinking about going into engineering, and they're like, was it easy to find a job? And I'm like, well, no, it's not. I mean, when in life is it like easy to find a job in anything?
Never. Yeah.
Yeah, never. I mean, that's just not a thing but for a reference point, when I was in music, I probably spent a year looking for another job and like still didn't find one. So I spent probably 6 weeks looking, and that was my job, was finding a job, like every single day, just sitting down. Jessica, kind of like you, I think I started off just going wide, and then I started saying, okay, unless I'm going to take the time to write a cover letter, to write a meaningful email where I've researched the company, then I'm not even going to bother applying. And this kind of funny thing happened, which I think I've heard from other people happens too, where like you start off and it's just like you hear nothing, and then all of a sudden you kind of get into your groove and you like figure out your little spiel you say in interviews and how to talk about your projects properly. And I actually I had more than one offer when I made my decision, but I like literally had nothing prior to.
That's awesome.
One day I was like, whoa. So yeah, it's definitely hard work, but like beyond worth it. And I also just, if it's helpful at all, I have been through a second job hunt process already, because the company I joined actually closed down at the start of COVID. So I became unemployed again, right like that last week in March, when everything was just going crazy, to say the least. And companies were having crazy layoffs left and right. And I was terrified because no one was hiring. And so again, for like a month, I didn't hear anything. And I was like, oh my God, everyone says that once you have your foot in the door, it's really easy after that. And like, I'm not hearing anything back. But I will say, as soon as companies started hiring again, which was about a month later, like engineering is very in demand, and it's a really, really, I feel like I'm in such a fortunate position, especially during COVID, because it is, even during COVID, it's in demand and companies are hiring engineers.
Yeah, I'm really grateful that I left hospitality to work in this industry, because hotel, I would have been out of a job for this entire period of time.
Yeah, I left music. There's no tours going on, anything, and that's so,
yeah, no.
Unless you're Spotify, like that's how that's what pays the bills in music right now, is touring. So.
Okay.
I thank you for sharing that. I think being super candid and honest about how hard it is to find a job, but that ultimately it's worth it. As you guys just explained, you have jobs during a very turbulent time in history. So that's super helpful to share. Thank you. Jessica, we got 2 questions about folks who are slightly on the older side and wondering what they, as you said, they're not spring chickens. What was the interview process like compared to maybe some of the peers that were also interviewing for the job? And I have the question specifically is, my biggest fear is once I finish the program, having a hard time finding a job due to my age. Do you have any advice for these students?
Don't think about the age. That hung me up for quite a while. And yeah, there are people out there who look at you because you're not your 20-something or whatever, then you don't need them. You don't need them. There are people out there looking for people who can do the job, who are mature and can speak English, who can show maturity, who can think on their feet, who have patience and understand and empathy and compassion and things that other youngers probably don't have. So I would say you need to highlight those strengths in your interview process, which is what I tended to do. I stuck out like a sore thumb when I went to interview processes, like if I went to the Flatiron campus recruiting or anything, because I was so unique. And you should use that as a PowerPoint, not as a debility, to the interview. They want to know who you are. So show who you are. You have the same knowledge these kids have. You have the same thing they have, but you get to portray it in a much better way, in a much more mature way. And that's one of the reasons I was hired, is because of the way I think, my experience, and everything else. So you don't need people who don't need you. You don't. They're out there, though. There's good ones out there.
Can I just add on to that really quickly, actually, that there was in my cohort, there was a woman who was more, in that age bracket. And she's like so cool and so smart and has had all these really, really cool careers in her past. And she was the second person in our cohort to get hired. So
yeah, I really think that whatever makes you unique, like if that's something that makes you stick out from the crowd, that's going to be something that you can use in your favor a lot of the time.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Very inspiring responses. Have a question from Cameron. During your job search, does career services make introductions and help you get interviews? How do you work with career services?
When I worked with career services, they don't introduce you to jobs. They help you and guide you to do your best. They do the campus recruiting, and I did about three campus recruitings. The first one was phenomenal. It was just the experience of being able to practice your interview skills was, that's what it was basically for me. I met a lot of cool people. I was able to really network with companies, even though I didn't get the job, but they remembered me. I'm still friends with some of them on LinkedIn. It's cool. So they don't give you or get you a job. You get the job, but they give you the tools to be able to do that. And then with your career coach, which I highly, highly recommend that you do work with your career coach. It seems a little weird in the beginning. You're like, oh God, I got to do this, I got to do that. Well, you know what? Do you want the job? Because there's a million people out there looking for a job. Do you want the job? Then you got to put your best foot forward to get the job. So that's what I would say. Career services is there as your support system.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, want to go?
No, I was going to say you should go.
Yeah, I mean, I'm based in LA. There's not a Flatiron campus here. I knew that going into things. So I wasn't necessarily like introduced people. I do know people in my cohort who were introduced to recruiters and who did go to job fairs at campuses in their area, and they found those definitely helpful. I think though, like Jessica said, what they really do is they give you the tools, and they kind of create a structure where, I don't want to say like you're going to get a job, but I mean, I don't know. Yeah. They give you the tools where it makes it, if you put in the effort, like something will click. At the end of the day, like no one can get you a job but you. So all that you can really do is have a support system that's giving you that's like setting you up to go out and do it for yourself, which Flatiron definitely does.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add on to that. One of the biggest things that I was nervous about coming into tech with no technical background at all. I think I saw that was another question, so I'll just hop on that. I didn't know what computer science was when I went through college. I don't think I knew what programming was until the year that I started. looking at Flatiron and trying to kind of get myself prepared to apply. And so one of the things that was really intimidating to me about the job search was putting together that new resume of these are my technical projects. These are my past work experiences. So like I have been working, but essentially trying to figure out how hotel management maps and is bringing something to the table in a software engineering position. I did a lot of customer service work, and oddly, you know, that's a really good thing to have if anybody else is coming from the same background. And so that was one of my biggest concerns, and one of the biggest things that my career coach did for me is we drafted several different versions of my resume and what those bullet points would look like so that it mapped over to useful skills. And then the other thing that we did was go through my LinkedIn to make sure that that looked the best it possibly could. And you know, my husband's still looking for a job in tech, actually. And when I went to go see if we could find some similar services for him, it would be hundreds of dollars. So like this is just kind of one of those really great built-in perks that you're getting access to that I had no idea was really a thing prior to this. Getting help writing your resume, getting feedback on your resume, getting feedback on your LinkedIn. And then, you know, like, of course, another thing is that my career coach was like my personal cheerleader, you know, and that's something that you need. Like, that's just something that you're going to need when you're going through the job hunt process, because it is really stressful. And it's really nice to have somebody in your corner cheering you on.
It's very true. Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that. My career coach still is. She's magnificent. But you're right. There's so many points where you feel like, God, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? And she's there and she's looking over your shoulder going, okay, so do you want the job or you don't want the job? You tell me. I want you to be happy. So if this is what you want, then let's do the work and I'll help you. Let's do the work and get there. You have to think, you know, what have you got to lose? If you don't use the coach, are you going to be doing any better than if you do use the coach? They obviously know what they're doing. You know, they have the tools. Use the tools. It gives you a better advantage. It's not going to kill you. Just use them. So I totally agree.
Yeah, awesome responses. And Bryn, to your point about finding a job is a job in itself, I often hear students refer to the job search as like mod 6, like it's this whole aspect of the program that you have to go through, and it's equally as hard. So it's great to have that.
And talk about imposter syndrome, man. I mean, when you're looking for that first job, and you're seeing all those long lists of qualifications, and you're like, cool, I have like 3 of those, but yeah, it's tough. But you know, you just have to find someone honestly that you click with, and then like none of that stuff really matters. If they see you and they're like, this person can figure it out, at least if it's a smaller company, that's really all you need.
That's very true.
Awesome. I saw a question come through, so maybe we can do round robin quickly on how long your job search lasted. So from the day you graduated to when you got your job, what did that look like?
6 weeks for me, I think.
5 months for me.
And I mentioned that I got mine. I just got really lucky. And I've seen a couple other Flatiron grads do this. But because I was self-paced, I could slow down a little bit towards the end and keep putting in applications while I was working on the curriculum. But I got my offer letter on May 27th and finished the course on June 15th and started my job on June 29th. So.
Awesome, thanks. Got a question from Michael and a similar one from Matthew. Do you all have full-time jobs now? And during your job search process, did you consider part-time jobs, or did you see part-times available for software engineers?
So I actually know one of the people that I connected with most that's also a Flatiron grad. She actually came out before, I think she was looking for a job last summer, and she came out and she said, I want a part-time remote job. And a couple people on Twitter said those don't exist. And like 2 weeks later, she had a part-time remote job. So it's possible. And it's definitely a thing that's out there. If you're looking for it. Mine's a full-time job. But it is an apprenticeship. And that's actually something that I really wanted. Because I have been in a lot of situations with jobs in the past where I didn't get the adequate training going into the job, and then I didn't feel like I could do my job well. And so I think maybe part of the reason I don't experience imposter syndrome at such a high rate is because I'm still part of my apprenticeship is doing 18 weeks of class to start off, to make sure that I'm ramping into that job at a slower rate. And so that's really great for me, and that's something that I wanted. So it's a little bit different than a full-time software development job typically.
I feel like Amazon's good with that stuff.
Yeah.
Like these programs where you're kind of learning because they have such obviously the AWS and stuff, like specific needs.
Yeah, I think that
cool.
they expect you to not know everything. And so specifically with my program, and this is something that I'll mention, is that my program is for veterans and military spouses. So that's a big thing is, they offer that because they knew that veterans and military spouses were very in line behavior-wise with what they wanted from their candidates. But they really were lacking that, 1 to 2 years of experience, which a lot of people are lacking that. And so they said, well, we're just going to train these people with what we want them to know. So I'm learning a couple different things. It's kind of like doing a second boot camp, honestly, but I'm really happy with it. And then I'll do a year of on-the-job training after that. And so that's kind of a really nice ramp-up period for me. And it's nice to be at a company that's invested in my learning and growth, is what I would say. That's something that I really admire.
I am a full-time full stack engineer, but I do work remote. Our company went completely remote when COVID happened. We actually had a headquarters, but we decided, you know what, we all did well remote, so we're staying remote, which is great. When I was hired, they hired 3 junior engineers. It was me and 2 other people, in the whole hopes of training us as well. So they did it purposely so that they could give back, because they also knew how hard it was to have any kind of experience past, when you leave school, you don't have the experience, and it's hard to find a job sometimes. You'll see job ads out there going, okay, we want an entry position, but you need to have 5 years. And you're like, how is that entry? How is that a junior? That's not a junior. That's a senior, So I was very lucky. We do get training. It is hands-on and it's in your face, but they give us the chance to really learn from what it is we're doing. So it's a good atmosphere for us. But there are some out there, like Bryn was saying, there's quite a few places that are doing apprenticeships now. Amazon is one of the big ones, but there are some others out there. Eighth Light is a good place to start to go to. There's a lot of companies that are looking for training their own and getting you up to speed. So as far as part-time though, I haven't heard much about part-time.
So I'm a full-time full stack engineer as well. My previous position was the same thing. I've actually, though, just over my job searches, have received 2 different part-time offers. They weren't necessarily jobs that were posted as part-time. One of them was a job that I applied for at the beginning of COVID, and so throughout the job process, it went from being a full-time job to being a part-time job. And then the other one was just someone that I reached out to, no formal job posting, and turned out they needed some part-time work. So I think there's definitely part-time work out there. I think you have to like dig a little more and be a little more resourceful on where to find it if that's what you want. Like you'll probably find it more, I think, just in your network, people who need a kind of a helping hand, more so than like formal job postings. That's been my experience, at least.
Awesome. Thanks for clarifying, everyone. I have a question. Can you share some tips on how to prepare either for the interview process of Flatiron School or for preparing for day one of class? Can you recommend any books, textbooks, or just regular books that help you start thinking like a software engineer?
That's a tricky one because it depends on where you're coming from. Have you ever done coding before? For your interview for Flatiron, I have to tell you, my interview was just me being me and explaining from my heart why I wanted to be a part of Flatiron. What was it about Flatiron that appealed to me so much that I needed to be in Flatiron? Because there were only two schools I was looking at. That was Grace Hopper or Flatiron. I didn't even think about the rest. And I knew I needed to be in Flatiron. So I had to convince them with what I was able to bring to the table, which was not much other than my experience as a manager. Highlight yourself. As far as reading, what you can read, basic knowledge of coding. There are some things out there for coding. Clean Code by Uncle Bob Martin. There's a couple of things out there just to get your mind wrapped around it. You may not understand everything right away. Computer science, basic computer science, pick up a basic, go Google basic computer science and Wikipedia will give you some basics, just so that you have an idea of what it is you're looking at. But that's generally it. There's a lot of videos too. If you go on YouTube and just listen, one thing I've noticed about some of the senior engineers out there, they love to talk about themselves. They love to talk about what they find wrong in the business, what they love in the business. Everybody, so just listen to what they're saying and get an idea of what it is that they expect. That's it. Just tell them why you want to go. Tell them why you need to be there. I don't know if that's
funny you said. It's funny you said Clean Code. I'm reading that right now, actually. I just finished clean architecture, and then I'm reading Clean Code, and then I got the one that like is Clean Code and the Clean Coder right there, the Clean Program or something like that. So
Sandy Metz, Bob Martin. There you go, right there. That's
yeah. I'm a big fan of code books. I'm a big fan of Udemy. If you guys aren't familiar with Udemy, I'll put it in the chat. It's an awesome platform where you can basically get a course on like anything, and it's a totally legit way to learn stuff. I don't let it like replace a boot camp because that's a totally different experience, but as supplemental learning, it's awesome. I learned the Express framework from Udemy, which is like one of the things I needed to get my first job. So and I think it kind of depends like how your mind works, how you process things. For me, it really helps me to have an understanding of like the bigger picture of what I'm doing. So for me, it really helped to learn about just like the internet and how data travels and requests and responses and all of that stuff that we do on our phones every single day, but don't really know how it works unless we make a point of learning. For me, learning like bigger picture stuff just about the internet and data and how it all works together was really helpful. But I honestly just think like, I don't know, Amanda, Jessica, you guys can say if you think this is bad advice, but I think just like inundating yourself with stuff and with the vocabulary and the language and the ideas, and honestly, they probably won't make sense at first. Clean architecture did not make sense at first. I had to read each chapter like twice, but eventually it starts to click. Just because you keep hearing, you'll see the same topics and the same ideas and vocabulary come back, all the time. I think just like, don't be afraid. It's a totally new language. It's totally new vocabulary and worlds. So yeah, just dive into it and absorb as much of it as you can.
Yeah, so I think I also wrote down Udemy. I just put a couple ideas that I had in the chat as well, just because sometimes it's a little hard to make sure that you're getting what people are saying. So Udemy is a great resource, and honestly, if you're very, very new to code, you might want to start with like HTML, like an HTML CSS front end kind of course, just because I think that's a little bit easier to see what you're doing. It's like you get to change the color of the font, and that's something that's like a kind of immediate gratification. So that's kind of cool to see that you're making something. And then another resource that I had was I know it's at least an iOS app called Grasshopper. I think that's by Google. But it teaches JavaScript, and it's kind of gamified it a little bit. So it's fun. You know, there are different levels that teach you different things. And so that's one of the things that I started out doing. And then Code Academy is another big one that people like to share. The other thing that I was going to point out is that, especially for my interview, I needed to complete a certain amount of the boot camp prep course for that Flatiron offers. And so I do think that that is also a really great way to see if you are
And that's free, is it not?
it's free. Yeah, it's free. And I think that I had to complete a certain percentage of that course before I could be admitted, I would say. I think that's what it was. It's probably changed since then. But I think that that's a really good way. That's usually when people ask me, hey, what should I know about Flatiron? I say, well, what's the curriculum like? Go check out the bootcamp prep course, because it's outlined almost the same way that the online classes. So you can get a really good taste of, you know, am I gonna click with this well? There are other resources that you also get as a student. Like we have video study groups. There are other ways to connect, but that's really the core of the class, how everything's set up with a lot of like reading and labs. Like you read a lesson about the topic that you're learning, and then you apply that lesson in a lab a lot of the times. So that's another great resource. Awesome.
Two other quick things too. First of all, hot tip on Udemy I meant to mention. It's always going to say the courses are like $200, but they have sales like literally every day. Yeah. So I always mean to tell people that don't ever buy a course for more than $10. Like Google a coupon or something.
Yeah.
They're always have 90% off sales. So
yeah,
remember that for Udemy. Also another resource that, like, I don't know, I just read it, but I just read Steve Jobs' book, and I've kind of been telling people that, like, I think that's an interesting place to start if you're kind of like, you know, if you find code scary, as I think we all do at first. He was not a coder, but he developed kind of obviously the evolution of computers. And so a lot of the terms that I hear used, I heard them, I don't know, I guess I read about them, but in much more human terms. So, and it's just a really good book. But yeah, if you're looking to kind of get more into that world, it's like, it's an easy read. It's not, you know, the other coding books are obviously like really technical and dense. This is a biography that you'll pick up some coding knowledge along the way with.
Awesome resources. Thank you. We have about 6 minutes left, so I'm going to try and squeeze in 3 more questions, but we might just do 2. Want to ask you all, why did you choose Flatiron School as opposed to kind of anything else in the bootcamp space, or compared to a CS degree? What made you choose 1, the bootcamp route, and then 2, what about Flatiron School is appealing to you?
So bootcamp over CS degree for me was that with being a mom and not having like reliable childcare, it just wasn't really feasible for me to go to like a traditional college. The other thing is that I didn't have any student loans when I started Flatiron, and I didn't want to take student loans out for a second bachelor's. That just didn't sound fun to me. And then I did end up taking out a loan for Flatiron, and I've actually already paid that off. Yippee. But yeah, it's such a huge difference in the kind of like how much you're paying to get a salary, I guess is how I always think of it. The difference between the average salary with a bachelor's degree and how much you're paying for that, like maybe at least, if you're going to state school and paying $10,000 a year, that's $40,000. And most, I think I saw something that said that the average bachelor's student made an average of like $50,000 when they graduated from college, which that's probably different for CS degrees, but paying $40,000 to make $50,000 is not a great, I don't know, not a great use of money, versus paying, a lower cost for a boot camp. And then really taking a look at, for me, the big thing was the jobs report that Flatiron was putting out, looking at the average starting salary for our graduates. So, even I'm not sure what the tuition is currently, but looking at that tuition cost versus how much the starting salary average was, it's just way better than a CS program. And I did know some CS grads, and it was interesting to me that they didn't know some of the stuff that I was learning. They didn't know, some of these things that I took for granted as, being kind of fundamental coding information, like GitHub. I met at least 2 or 3 computer science majors who had no idea what GitHub was until I asked them about it. And they did their own research. So those are big factors that went into my decision.
My decision is pretty much the same as Amanda's. Money. The main thing was the money. I didn't have much money. I wasn't employed at the time. The second thing was the job support. Having not just the job support, but the reputation that Flatiron has and the care that they put into the job support. It wasn't all talk. They walk the walk. They really do. They help you as much as they possibly can. They support you as much as they possibly can in order for you to get a job. And as far as a CS degree, you are absolutely right. I work with people who have CS degrees who don't know diddly squat about coding. And that's because when you go for CS, you learn theory, you learn algorithms. So when they do the code challenges, yeah, they can figure all that out. But in practical use, we have the practical use. We have the tools to be able to sit down and code something, whereas a lot of CS students would not be able to do that. They'd be able to tell you what it's supposed to do. But so it's like you have to have a mesh of both. And you do fill in the blanks with the CS stuff as you're working. So all in all, I think I made the best choice that I could. As I said, it was either Grace Hopper or Flatiron, and Grace Hopper didn't have an online course like Flatiron did, and I knew I wanted Flatiron. That was it.
Yeah, so when I was in college, I didn't want to be an engineer. I wanted to be a music manager, so I didn't even consider studying CS. Someone the other day was like, why didn't you study CS in college? I'm sure you thought about it. And I was like, no, it literally did not cross my mind, actually, not even once.
Nope.
And then, yeah, I don't think it really even crossed my mind to go back to like proper college to get a CS degree, because it just, I don't know, if you already have a degree, like it doesn't make, I personally don't think it makes sense. I think, I think you learn so much in a boot camp, and I just don't think it's necessary. And then Flatiron, because Flatiron, I mean, truly Flatiron, I think has one of, if not the best reputation. The curriculum is phenomenal. I learned so much, but I really learned it. It wasn't just they didn't just tell me to like stick this here or whatever. I understood what I was doing. So yeah, for me, it was a pretty easy choice.
Awesome. And I don't want to gloss over the tuition conversation. I know that's like a very important and emotional and hard decision to make when going through a boot camp decision. So I will include our admissions contact information in the follow-up email to this session. So if you have specific questions about tuition, you can connect with someone. It's unique in every case, so I don't want to blanket statement and say, well, this will work for you. So I will send out contact information so that if you're thinking about tuition, it's weighing heavily on you, you can talk to someone. We're almost at the hour, or we are at the hour, we're 1 minute past. So I do want to say thank you, Amanda, Bryn, and Jessica, for joining us and lending us your expertise and your time tonight. I've learned a lot, and it's really awesome to hear of your awesome success stories, especially during a really crazy time in life. Before we wrap up, do you want to just close out by saying, knowing what you know now, what's one piece of advice you would give to someone considering learning to code? And we can end on each of those notes.
My advice for someone who wants to learn how to code is, like Bryn, I'm a musician and a dancer and an artist, and coding to me is an art. It's like music notes to me. So I have a passion for it. And if it's calling you, damn it, do it. You got to do it. I mean, you just go for what you can't break anything. You're not losing anything. You're learning something that's phenomenal, that has impact in the world. The things you can do with it are phenomenal. So if it's calling to you, do whatever you can to get it done, even if it takes you forever to do it. Okay?
Jessica, you're getting more job offers in the chat. Yeah, I mean, I like just go do it. If you're even thinking about it, go do it. I think you'll figure out pretty quickly if you like it or not. I fell in love with it. Some people's like heads just explode and they hate it. So I think you'll know pretty quickly if you like it or not. I think people get way too obsessed with like figuring out even where to start. It doesn't matter. Just start with HTML, go watch a video on YouTube, go sign up for the Flatiron prep. Like, it does not matter. Just start somewhere, download a text editor, VS Code, Atom. Those are two things. Google those, press download, like pull up the terminal on your laptop and look up something on YouTube and print hello world. Like, that's just start. Don't be afraid.
I would probably say that this is just not, for me, there is always kind of a temptation to quit because this was a hard process, and it's a difficult subject to learn. And I would just say, don't quit, just keep going. Because this is not a career field that's going to go away anytime soon. The number of like computer science majors that are coming out of college right now is not going to meet the demand. It's not meeting the demand. So this career field's not going anywhere, and you want to hop in here just like as soon as you can, because I wish I'd been doing this much longer than I have been.
Me too.
Me too. It's really,
my only regret is that I didn't do it sooner. Yeah. Honestly, my only regret is that I waited so long to do it.
It's very exciting. It's an exciting field, exciting people, the whole thought process, the concepts, the innovation. It's just very exciting.
Someone the other day asked me how I manage work-life balance working at home, and I was like, I honestly don't feel like there's anything to manage, because I genuinely, like, I love my job. It is so fun. I geek out over it. It's just solving puzzles all day.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's just fun.
Well, I'm ready to get started after all of that. Thank you for that. Do you want to, before I close this out, do you want to say everyone will get this recording once it's finished downloading? So that'll probably be tomorrow morning. I'll include my contact information. So if you'd like to connect with any of the panelists tonight, email me and I can connect you to the right person. I'll include admissions information as well as some of the resources mentioned tonight. But do just want to say thank you to the three of you for.
And I just say one more thing.
Go for it.
LinkedIn. Use LinkedIn. Look me up. Tag
Yeah,
me.
same.
Try to network with me. I will, just let me know that you were on this this forum, and the more you build up your LinkedIn, just do it.
Yeah, definitely get on
LinkedIn
and get on Twitter if you're not already there, and start talking about code, and definitely connect with all three of us. Just send us a message and let us know that you're here, so I know who you are.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Well, I hope everyone has a great night. Thank you again, and have a great rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Really nice, guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.